Who the Wild Things Are with Ryan McGuire.
You gotta listen to your body.
Oh my God, maybe, I could get out there, I could do this.
Let's take a ride, find your wild side, real stories, see with your own eyes.
It's so beautiful.
I'm gonna have the best time out here.
I was in tears. I was just like, that's the best, man.
Welcome back to Who the Wild Things Are. My name is Ryan McGuire, and I'm here to bring you conversations with the most wild folks on the planet. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. And if you enjoyed the episode, share it with a friend. Appreciate you guys. Let's get it going. All right, Lucas, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah, back in your old stomping grounds.
Yep. Yeah.
So we were just talking, and I didn't want to get into it before this, but I stumbled upon your story initially because my friend Mitchell came across the idea of the Teton picnic, and he said, yo, there's this crazy like endurance thing. I think you'd be really into it. It's just like a big day in the mountains, biking, swimming, climbing. And I was like, okay, I'll check this out. And I went on and I saw a blog, and it was your blog. And I realized, well, at first I had no idea because you don't lead with it. Your blog was just like kind of like, yeah, I'm a mountain athlete, went up, did it with my friends. And then I think maybe I looked up your Instagram and I saw Little Lefty Luke, and I was like, I wonder what that's all about. Like, was that his name as a kid? But you were actually referencing your arm. And I'm going to mess up the way you say it, but arthrogryposis?
You got it. That's
okay.
Right. Yep.
I've been practicing like in my bedroom. And
Nice, yeah.
So yeah, I came across a story, and being a mountain athlete myself, I'm always thinking like, yeah, I think I'm doing some cool things. And then I saw what you were doing, and I was just like immediately astonished. So I was like, I got to get this guy on the podcast and do whatever it takes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm stoked you're here, and I'm excited to talk about some of the things you've done, and also talk about some of the things that you've got coming up in the future.
Cool. Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm flattered. I've heard of you as well. I've been listening into your podcast now since you reached out to me, and you've done some cool things yourself. So it's pretty cool.
I appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you. So I think a good place to start would be just kind of explaining what it was like for you growing up and kind of getting into this world, because I imagine that your path was a little bit different than the average mountain athlete.
Yeah, probably. Let's see. Well, I was born in Wisconsin, and then moved down to North Carolina. So that's kind of where I was raised mostly, just outside of Asheville. And I guess being in the mountains, just when your backyard is the woods, you kind of start exploring. I mean, I remember like being up in Wisconsin, exploring was like going out, like we're on a block, so you just like go up and hopping over the back fence, and you're in somebody else's yard, and you're like, oh, this is a whole new world, and you hop over the next fence, you're like, oh, that's crazy. So I guess I've always had that like adventurous kind of spirit, we'd like explore old broken down garages or whatever, but like I would say as far as being outside, I always had friends, and we never really talked too much about it. Like maybe I was the one arm guy to them, I don't know, but it just kind of was what it was. I was just kind of another kid. Yeah. Which was kind of cool, and I think that's kind of how my parents raised me. They still expected me to do chores just like my brother and sister, and I don't know if we ever really talked too much about it, if that makes sense. So I was kind of like, so it made it easy to integrate and just like maybe do my thing and have my interests. I got into basketball as a kid and loved it, and just kind of kept wanting to explore that. I did get some pushback from like coaches and people saying like, all right, like you got one arm, like, why don't you go play like soccer or something like that,
And it was at birth, so it was kind of from the jump, or?
Yeah, it was at birth. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So it's congenital. They don't know what happened. They don't know how it was caused. They link it to like thalidomide, but that was like in the 1930s and 40s, and so who knows? My mom wasn't on thalidomide, but yeah, so it just kind of was what it was. And, you know, it's just like, all right, cool. Like, work with what you got and go from there. Yeah, so I did like maybe pushing against the grain a little bit, you know, like pursued basketball all through high school, made the varsity team. And,
Hell yeah.
You know, just really loved it and loved that competitive spirit. And I think just, I don't know, it was just something about it. I think Michael Jordan growing up, you know, I like watched him and Kobe Bryant and was like, that's what I'm going to do that. You know, I'm going to be in the NBA. That was like my, after high school, I was like, okay, probably not. But, you know, I'm too short for that anyway. Yeah.
We all go through that stage in our life as like, you know, just like normal white dudes. We're like, yeah, I'm going to be a professional basketball player.
Yeah, right.
And then one day, you know, watch some kid slam dunk it when he's like 13 and you're like, oh wait, I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be that.
Probably not. Yeah. Even on my team, kids were throwing alley-oops and stuff. I'm like, yeah, okay. But I was always the little guy. I was like a point guard, so I could dribble around people, and I was so short and quick that I could like dribble around and dish it out and stuff. So, you know, that was always fun.
Sweet.
So, but yeah, then just kind of, I guess, I started exploring, you know, sports. I think for me also, I had some like kind of troubled family life, you know, growing up with a alcoholic father. And so sports were kind of my way to get away from that. And then I think it just kind of, I loved adventure and I loved pushing myself, and I found running, and I loved like, I kind of actually loved that it was kind of more me against me, and just like, what can I go out and do? And so that's kind of, I just started running and going through the woods and just kind of loved it. So, and it kind of kept me away from a lot of like the stuff going on at home. So I think that was probably like a good refuge like that I took, you know. So
do you think in that moment that you realized that it was helping mend like some of that, some of the shittier stuff that was going on, or is that like a retroactive thought that you've now processed through?
Maybe a little bit of both, actually. Like I think I had an inkling, like I kind of knew, like, I mean, I was just like, you know, I played, like, one of the reasons I did 3 sports was because it kind of kept me away from that. And it kept me like pursuing something like physical, which I liked, and staying out of the wrong crowds and stuff, which I didn't want to be a part of. So it gave me some positive experience. But yeah, I think it was like, I did know that I was like, I don't want to be a part of that, you know, like, you know, I don't want to be a part of like what's going on at home and just be encased in that all the time. I want to be have an excuse to, I guess, be out of that. So
for sure.
So yeah, I think I did know that. And then, now I can look back on that and be like, yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. And it's probably what part of why I do what I do now, and, you know, like to pursue my adventures that kind of came out. So
sweet.
Yeah.
Well, one adventure in particular that I want to pick your brain about selfishly, that's one of the reasons I have a podcast, is because I selfishly get to ask people questions that I want to know the answer to. Sure. Is about the picnic. So if you could just, I mean, I know loosely about it, but if you could just kind of explain it and kind of give us your experience with going through that adventure.
Yeah. Let's see. So I was living in Colorado at the time. So after college, I packed my stuff up and just kind of left and ended up in Vail. And I was working for the Forest Service as a wilderness ranger up there. And I think I was taking like yearly trips, like up to the Tetons and stuff. You know, I always loved being in the Tetons. I'd worked there in college, in the park, and just fell in love with it. Knew, like, I was like, this feels like home to me. And so on one of these trips, I was going up there, friend of a friend, kind of like, we were crashing on his couch, and he's like, dude, have you heard about this thing? It's called the picnic. And he's like, I think like you might be, it sounds like it's kind of like something you'd like to do. And this was probably in, I don't know, 2014 maybe, or something like that. And so I like immediately like, maybe it was 15. And I immediately like looked it up, you know, did some research on it, saw the original video that the guy that made it, David Gonzalez, like he posted a video of it. And I was just like, dude, this looks epic, you know? But I was like, I was kind of like, is this possible though? Like, can I do something like this? But that was kind of my style. I just kind of threw myself in things like triathlons and stuff when I just wanted to go do something like, so, yeah, I guess that's how I found out about it. And it wasn't until I think maybe maybe a couple years later, like it just kept sitting with me. It was like festering, you know, it was just like, I'd be out like working and I'd just be thinking about it, you know, I'd do some more research on it or something. And then I'd be like, all right, I know I need people to do it with. Right. And the cool thing that on David Gonzalez's video is, I don't know if you've seen it, but he posts, he invited a bunch of his friends. I think he did it in like 2011 or 2012, the first year. And then in the next year, he invited a bunch of people to do it with him from Jackson. And so he had like a handful of guys do it, and he posted who they were and what their occupation was. And so this guy, I was like, all right, can I contact one of these people to like, cause like, so I know somebody's done it and like I can go do it with them. So I found out this guy, I landed on this guy, Ryan Burke, and said he was working at Teton Adaptive Sports. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm an adaptive guy. Like that sounds kind of perfect. Like maybe he would be interested in doing it with me. So I just picked up the phone, called Teton Adaptive, was like, hey, I need to get in touch with this guy, Ryan Burke. Like, I kind of told him a brief, like, I want to do this thing called the picnic. And they're like, we normally don't do stuff like that. I don't like, I'm like, all I need is an email. I just need to get in contact with him. So, they finally gave me like his contact, you know? And so I throw him out an email and I'm like, hey dude, I don't know if like, I know you don't know me and I don't know you, but like, this is what I'm about. This is what I want to do. If you're interested, great. If not, I'll move on to the next guy or something like that. And he like just messaged me. He was like, dude, hell yeah.
Sweet.
Let's go do it. So, yeah, I think we just started it. We set the date for like the next summer. So it would have been like, yeah, I think it was like 2017, I want to say.
And what all does the picnic consist of in total?
Yeah. Okay. That's a good question. Yeah. So picnic is it starts and ends in Town Square of Jackson. So the idea is to start in Jackson, climb the Grand, and come back via basically a mountain triathlon. So you're riding your bike from Jackson 22 miles to Jenny Lake. You swim across Jenny Lake 1.2 miles, and then you run up the Grand, and you run back down. And that's about 22 to 24 miles, I think, total, with like 7,500 feet of vert. And then you come back to Jenny Lake, swim back across, and bike back. Wow. And it's just, so it's kind of like, however long it takes you, go for it, have fun. It's not like a sanctioned event. Like it's not like everybody shows up on a start line. It's just you go do it when you want to do it. And that really enticed me. I was like, that's cool. Like that's just like kind of like a backyard fun day. But I was still living in Colorado at the time, right? Yeah. So I drove up to, I was chatting with Ryan on the phone. He was kind of giving me some tips and stuff. I actually basically created my own picnic in Vail because I was just like trying to train, and I was like, all right, I need to like be able to climb 7,500 feet, know that I can do that in a push and do it like relatively efficiently. So I like connected a bunch of mountains together, like behind Beaver Creek Resort, and then like swam Nottingham Lake, did loops there, and rode my bike and stuff like that.
Sweet.
So kind of, I was like pretty confident.
It's a really good training ground.
Really good training ground.
You know?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
Pretty similar conditions overall, like similar elevation and altitude and all that kind of stuff.
Totally. Yeah.
Weather's probably pretty similar.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was kind of perfect. I mean, the only difference is like in the Tetons, it's all just sheer vertical, like it's up and down, whereas like, you know, in Colorado it's kind of hard to get that type of vert in one push.
Yeah,
so you just kind of have to connect, you know, a handful of mountains or whatever.
The Tetons are so bizarre that way, the way that it's just like flat and then they just jut out of the ground, like like someone put them there almost. It doesn't look like a Colorado mountain range. It's just like this random massive castle of rock on like a floating meadow. It's a very interesting like formation.
It is, yeah. The way the plates just kind of clashed right there. I mean, it's wild. Like the Idaho side just went, pew,
Yeah.
and then the Wyoming side is kind of sinking underneath it and just created this, perfect, I guess, formation or so it's pretty sweet.
It's something that like pictures don't really do justice either. I feel like you see the pictures and they're like, that looks like a mountain, that looks pretty cool, but then when you get in front of it in real life and you look at the grand, you're like, whoa, that's like awe-inspiring.
Oh, they're like the picturesque mountains. I mean, I'm sure if you Google mountain right now,
But that
like,
that house or that little like barn thing that sits in the field and that's always in the foreground. Yeah,
totally. Yep.
Yeah.
You see that picture, iconic. But
I lived out in that area
crazy.
in a truck for a while, and it was
Nice.
it was freezing cold, but I loved every moment of it. Like it was
Yeah.
just a beautiful place to be.
Were you there for a winter?
Yeah, I was there in the winter.
Cool.
It was after I was gonna do that in Yellowstone, just bouncing around in the truck, but then Yellowstone was closed completely, so I just did Tetons and I loved it. I was like thankful that I ended up spending extra time there.
Nice.
So
Yeah,
that's great.
it's an epic place. Yeah, I rarely even go to Yellowstone. I mean, it's a great park, but Tetons are just like, I mean, for a lot of people, it's funny because you talk to a lot of people that go through there and they're like, they just drive through and that's all it is to them. They just,
For
like tourists that come through,
Right, right.
and they like Yellowstone is the destination, right, for them to drive through and stuff, and then they just drive past the Tetons and they're like awe-inspired, but like they don't go back there. I'm like, dude, just like go back in there, and
Yeah.
it's like a whole nother world. It's amazing.
spend some time actually like getting to know the place.
Yeah.
So tell me about the first time you actually did the picnic. What was I guess leading up to it, being an adaptive athlete, what kind of concerns did you have? Because there's a lot that can go wrong on an unsanctioned event with this level of complexity.
Yeah, that's a good question, but I don't know if I really thought about it, honestly. Like for me, it was just like, okay, I have somebody that wants to do it with me. That's rad. Like maybe for Ryan, it was more of of a thought process there. But for
Yeah.
me, I was just so stoked to have somebody to go with that knew what they were doing, at least that, just knows the terrain out there. I had climbed the Grand once before, so I was familiar with it when I was out there in 2011. I had climbed it, so it wasn't my first time up there, but I definitely just wanted somebody that I knew. Like I didn't have any friends at the time that like would want to do something like that with me, but I just knew I needed a partner, right? I'm like swimming. I mean, I can't be like, or I felt like being in the middle of this lake, at 3 a.m. and just doing that solo. I was like, I didn't feel too comfortable about that. So
Yeah, it's
I was
sketchy.
like, so I was like, I want to, and also like throughout the climb, like I knew I needed assistance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of people do solo it, but for me with one hand, it's like, when I climb it, I feel pretty confident the whole time, but there's enough exposure to where I'm like, if I mess up one move, like, it could go pretty poorly.
What's the rating on the Grand, like on that top section of I guess it's the Owen Spalding route particularly, right?
Yeah, so we did the Owen Spalding route. Yeah. What is it, like 5.5 maybe or something like that?
Right. So kind of right on that border of a lot of people's comfortability.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is the exposure that you get.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple moves, just like a couple moves in there that are like just enough that you're like, okay. For me personally, I'm like, it's nice to be on a rope for. Like there's a chimney section, there's a belly roll section.
The belly roll, right? I've seen
that part's cool.
I saw Jack Quensley practicing that because he was going for the FKT
Nice.
this past year.
Yeah.
And just like seeing him meticulously do this move 1,000 times, just like, because for the FKT, the fastest known time, you have to do those sorts of moves really efficiently, quickly.
Definitely.
So yeah, I got to see some of the strategy that he was imposing and like watching his brain work through all that.
Totally. Yeah. That's something that I've always had that thought in my mind. Like I would love to be able to free solo it because it would be so much more efficient.
Right.
But like just going up there, like, and spending the time to figure out the moves, to really dial it in would be really rad to build that confidence. Like for me, it's like I have to dyno so much, it's like every move I have to take off my hand.
Wow.
And so I really have to think about that because you don't have that safety of you can't have another arm.
There's no other
or
point of
hand.
contact.
Right. So it's like I got my feet, but you just really have to be confident with that next move, or you have to have good footing or something like that.
Yeah.
Like the belly roll for me is chill, but the consequence is super high, right?
It's a death fall, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
You're looking down like 1,500 feet or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just really dialing that in would be sweet, I think, and going for it. Like maybe doing a solo picnic one day would be cool. But yeah, I definitely want to be super confident on that. So
yeah, it's not one of those things that you want to like half-ass and just like find
no,
yourself stuck in.
no. Yeah, and they're out finding even on that. You want to like just have that dial. Like I'm sure for like the FKT, like just figuring out exactly where to go. I mean, like that's the cool thing about going with my buddy Ryan. And he introduced me to another guy, Lewis, and so we did it as a threesome there for that day, and it was like the best day ever. We're all like having so much fun. But they've done that route so many times. Like Ryan, I think he has the record for number of times doing it in a day, like going up and down the Grand, which he had just done that summer. Yeah, he's done that mountain so many times. I think he was going for he's done it like 3 times in like 18 hours or something. He wants to do it in like 4 times, or that was a goal of his. Yeah.
So he's freaky fit too.
Yeah. He is. Yeah. He's
Wow.
he's a good beast. Yeah. He gets after it.
So were there any like low points in your first attempt? I guess, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth or assuming, but I would think that biking would kind of be right in your bag, and then swimming might be a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, totally. So, biking I wasn't worried about that at all. It's only 44 miles total of biking, and it's like pretty flat terrain. Like It goes slightly uphill out of Jackson, but like, yeah, honestly, I've thought about adding more to the bike just because it's like kind of chill. The way back though can be brutal. Like if you got a headwind, if you're coming back in the day,
and tired.
yeah, exactly. When I got like an energy burst though on the bike the first time I did it though, because I was so pumped on the day and so stoked. Anyway, so the bike part not too concerning, but the swim, so that was one that I definitely was training for sure. Like I had done a couple sprint triathlons, so like I knew how to swim, and when I did that, I just kind of like. I had never swam before, like as far as doing laps in a pool. So I just like jumped in a pool and said, we'll figure it out. And I did I'm a reasonably fit guy. Did like a lap and was like done. I was like down and back like once or twice. And I was like, dude, that beat the shit out of me. This was when I was doing my first triathlon. But once you just figure out the rhythm, then you can go. So, like I said, when I was training for the picnic, I just kind of would jump in like Nottingham Lake or I'd go to the rec center up in Vale and just kind of start cruising and just see if I could put in like an hour of swimming or something like that, and then I really wanted to get some open water experience in. So then I went to Nottingham and I would just do I think a couple laps was like a mile or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I just make sure I could do a mile at least. Some days I'd do a couple miles, just to kind of just make extra sure I'd be all right for it.
Yeah.
But I also had a wetsuit, which helps. I had Zoot Sports. I was raising money for Paradox Sports. They're out of Boulder. They're an adaptive climbing organization.
Cool.
And so through that, I got connected with Zoot and Ultimate Direction for that one, and they gave me gear, and Zoot gave me like this super thick triathlon swimming wetsuit. So
Sweet.
I was like super warm. It was nice. I still have it, and I still use that one. It's got some rips in it, and I've patched up, but it's awesome. So,
solid.
Yeah.
That's I don't know, it's quite the undertaking. Like it's definitely on my list, but I can't even imagine like I don't know, just being an adaptive athlete and it's not like the power output or anything like that. It's just the problem solving. There's just little problems that you would have to solve along the way that, normal people wouldn't even think about. I don't know. little things, maybe even like transitions, like transitioning from a wetsuit to dry clothes in order for the hike.
Yeah, I always say the transitions are like another event in itself for me.
Right.
Yeah, it can be kind of brutal, especially after coming down from like the Grand, so either I'll have a buddy I'm like, dude, just take this thing, like rip this thing off, or I'll fiddle with it, and just like, yeah, I have like some maneuvers that I do, like some kind of techniques that I use to help get it off. But man, yeah, that's no easy way about it.
Yeah, it's not easy with two either.
Yeah, I know.
Even if you have,
when you're cold and stuff, so I do definitely have to think more about those kind of things, like whenever I'm in the mountains, like especially in the wintertime. But how the cold affects my body and how dexterity is affected. I mean, like I just went on a run this morning up in the mountains in Frisco and like came back and I could barely use my hand,
Right.
I'm like, it's like stuff I always have to think about, because if I lose this thing, I'm kind of SOL, right? Like, what else do I got? My legs, I guess I can, hopefully they can get me out.
Yeah. Teeth.
Yeah. Oh, I use my teeth. Yeah. I've been up on mountains before where I can't use my hand and I gotta like, couldn't zip up my jacket, so cold, and like put my helmet on, put my hood over my helmet because I couldn't buckle it. I'm just like a mess, but it's like, well, that's what I got. So here we go.
Leads to creative solutions, I'm sure, that other people wouldn't think of.
For sure. Yeah. Like flipping your jacket up and pulling the zipper with your teeth and stuff. There's a lot of little tricks you can learn, but.
And so what would you say, like the picnic that was, you said what, like 2015? What did you say? When did you do that one?
I think it was 2017 was my first one. I've done it a couple times.
And on top of that, you've done like a ton of crazy stuff. Another one, it's interesting, we have like a lot of the same endurance list because Lauren and I have been talking about whether or not Leadman is in the cards for this year. Okay. And I saw that you had also done Leadman, which is like kind of an obscure thing for people who aren't in this world, but the fact that we've both had our eyes on that and you've done that I thought it was an interesting coincidence.
Oh, you should do it. It's
fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely like, I guess it takes up kind of your summer because you're doing the marathon, the 50-mile biker run, 100-mile run, and 10K run, 100-mile bike, and then 100-mile run. But dude, it's so fun. Like the community around it is awesome. The other lead men and women competing, or you just kind of get to know them in these races and stuff. And it's like, there's like a camaraderie there. It's so fun. And, it's just fun to kind of like push your body. Yeah. In that event, I had done the Leadville, the 100-miler the year before, and then signed up for the Leadman the next year. And, the one thing I was like, I know I can do the running. I've done it. That's cool. But the mountain bike was like, man, that was like my tricky. I don't know if I can do it or not. Because having one hand on the handlebar, I don't have a prosthetic that I use. So
the other handlebar is just empty.
Yep.
Wow.
It's just chilling. I'm on a gravel bike. I literally took a hacksaw and sawed it off because it kind of gets in the way.
Huh. So do you have this? Then your right hand, is it more centered?
That's a great question. I didn't have the wherewithal to do that because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I got my mountain bike like maybe 3 weeks before the event. Okay. I had never really mountain biked before.
Wow.
So
what a savage.
I mean, I had like a grant to get a bike and it took like forever for it to get in. So I was like, just like, come on. And it finally came in. And so I just started I was living in Minturn at the time. So I would like bike up Meadow Mountain, and then I was near Leadville, so one of my weekends, I think, like the weekend before the race, I was like, I just need to make sure that I can do some of these descents with one hand. So I went and I did that day, I think I did all of the technical descents of the race just to make sure I could do them. Yeah. So that was nice. I could kind of preview the course. I flew over the handlebars at one point. I was like out there on my own and flew over the handlebars.
Oh my gosh.
I was just thinking to myself, like, what the hell am I getting myself into?
So I assume on a mountain bike, then you would only have a rear brake.
No, I flip them.
You flip them.
So yeah. I just took the left handlebar and I flipped it over. it's kind of tricky with that because it depends on the parts, if it works, how well it works rather. Like Shimano, I found it's not so compatible with flipping upside down because where the piston is, like once your brake fluid goes past a certain point, they stop working. SRAM parts do work, but I had Shimano on my mountain bike. Not to knock Shimano or anything, just saying that's how it is.
Hate you guys.
Yeah, right. But but it did work for the purpose of this event. You know, it's short enough that it was okay. So I use my middle finger for the rear brake, my index finger for the front brake, and then it's a 1x mountain bike. So levers, the gear shifter was right there. I even had a drop post I could flip.
Nice.
So that was really cool.
Sick.
I knew I needed like a good setup. Like I was like, I want a full squishy bike, you know, and I want a seat post drop that, you know, because I have no idea what I'm getting myself into here. And but it was rad. It was super fun. It was hard, you know. A lot of it, my plan is, you know, I'm a pretty solid uphill guy, so my plan was like, all right, just hammer all the uphills, and on the flats, like, you have to go basically balls to the wall, like just go. And then on the downhills, I knew I had to coast, like I had to chill because that's super sketchy for me.
Yeah.
So I'm just basically like pumping the brakes, you know, I mean, going 15 miles an hour, you know, people are like zooming by me, but that was kind of my plan. But then you get to the race, and I was near the back, and so all the people in front of you, I didn't really take that into account. So you get to like the first climb, and all of a sudden it's like a standstill.
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh no. So I'm like waiting in line. There's like 2 lines going, but because everybody just hauls ass like from the start, right?
Right.
And then they get to the first climb and they're like, oh, this is hard, you know, and then they like slow down. Some people even like, I think, get off their bikes and stuff. And I'm like sitting back here like, oh no, my plan is shot. You know, I'm like on an uphill here, and
this was my spot to pump. And I'm literally standing here.
Yeah, and I'm standing here. I'm like, this sucks. But you know, lo and behold, we started moving, and I was like, all right, well, do what you can. That's all you can do. So got up that first climb, and then did the down to, I think, Turquoise Lake around, and then the next climb, I think is it Sugarloaf? I can't remember the next pass. That one
right.
was wide enough, a little bit more rocky and stuff, so I could just blaze by people. I was like passing people left and right, like, all right, cool, now I'm in my zone. Got to power line. Oh, another thing when I scouted, I marked points that were too technical that I was like, okay, I can ride this when it's on my own, but I like need the whole kind of width of the course to go or to make it work,
because the lines, you know, are crossing side to side.
Exactly. Whereas like I knew people were going to be bombing, you know, so I'm like, I'm just going to hop off my bike and just run. You know, I'm good at running, so I'll just do that. So I like power line. I literally just like got to the top, knew he just like was like, all right, hopped off the bike, went off way to the side, and just grabbed the saddle and just sprinted down the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I had like 2 or 3 other markers along the course where I knew like, I don't want to crash into anybody. I don't want to kill anybody. I don't want to kill myself. So I'm just going to like hop off, grab the saddle, and sprint. And so that's kind of what I did. And it worked out really well.
Yeah, I mean, on a mountain bike, it's like this. You think of running versus biking like on a road sense. Like, obviously, the biking is going to be so much faster. But on really technical mountain trails, it's like, you know, the speed differential between running and biking shrinks.
Right.
So
I mean, I don't know if that's like not kosher for a mountain bike race, but I don't know. I was like, whatever, dude. I'm just going to do it. So, like Columbine, getting down that, like parts of that, I could do like parts of it coming down, but parts of it I was just like, all right, this is where mentally I just knew like this is the spot. I'm just gonna hop off and run with it. And so I was just sprinting there, just holding my bike and running. And I was kind of, like you're saying, I was kind of keeping up with people like that were biking it. So
right,
yeah,
that's awesome. What was the experience like in terms of the mountains and the nature and getting to know that area? Because, you know, a lot of people come there for one race maybe in their lifetime. You're doing 5 races in a summer.
Yeah, that was really cool. I mean, it was kind of like, you know, from Minturn where I was living at the time, it's like 40 miles or something like that. Like I had done like the the triangle loop, Copper Triangle, Leadville Triangle, whatever you want to call it, like the road loop. So I was like familiar on my bike. So I was familiar with Leadville a little bit, and I had actually working for the Forest Service. I had serviced some of the trails out there as well and helped out their crew. So I was like familiar with the area, but I hadn't really explored like the mines and stuff like that, like the marathon and the 50-mile kind of take you through, which was really cool.
So what, you run like through the earth, like in the shafts or something?
No, you just see them. You're passing them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, which was really cool. There's a bunch of roads and accesses, like these old like dilapidated houses and stuff that they used in all these mine shafts. So
yeah, it's an interesting story with all those old mining towns, like the massive influx of people, and then the well dries up, and then it becomes kind of like alcoholism and a generation of like despair, and then a lot of people leave, and then at some point it becomes cool again, and like an influx of money comes back, and now it's like really cool. So I don't know, it just seems like there's quite a few of those towns in Colorado. Like growing up in the East, it was like towns are towns forever. Like not that many people come, not that many people leave, but when you're talking about mining towns, they have such a dramatic shift in population and in just like economic growth that happens so rapidly.
Totally. I mean, yeah, like Leadville was almost at the brink of like extinction as a town, I guess, and then it kind of was revitalized by these race series and things.
Right.
So yeah, definitely some pretty cool history there, pretty wild, and now it's like seems to be pretty flourishing. Like
and it's expensive now.
Yeah, I know.
I've looked at land there for the last 3 years, and like I couldn't afford it 3 years ago, and I still can't afford it now.
Oh, I was doing the same thing back in the day. Yeah, because a lot of people were like living there and commuting to Vail and stuff for work, and I was always like, I don't want to do the drive, but then you get to a point where you're like, well, you kind of have to if you want to live here. So, but then when I was looking at it, I'm like, it's getting too expensive out there too. So
it's crazy.
Yeah. So
there was another endurance event that you did after Leadville that I wanted to ask you about, which is this high-low, highest-lowest adventure. And I don't know if you saw it yesterday. We have like it's just like that. It's a 365 calendar where it shows every day. You kind of got your different endurance things or mountain trips or backpacking or whatever, and kind of planning those out. And I was trying to think of some cool, unique things that I wanted to do for next year. And when I was doing my research for this episode, I saw this and I was like, wow, what a cool idea to go from the lowest point to the highest point on every continent in the world. I mean, that's like a lifetime mission and a lifetime commitment to do something like that.
So kind of the spark for that, a buddy of mine, Andre, he is another adaptive athlete. He has no legs. He was run over by a train when he was in college.
Holy crap.
And so we just woke up in the hospital, no legs, and so his life was kind of changed. But he's been at that. That was in his 20s. I think he's in his 40s now, so he's been doing that for a while. But he got into a bunch of endurance events after that happened, to kind of like take his mind off, give him a new kind of life drive, and he got into a lot of endurance things, and he quickly became one of the top endurance athletes in the world in his category. And I met him on a fundraiser event. It's a bike ride from San Francisco to San Diego with Challenge Athletes Foundation, and we just started chatting, and he's like, dude, I got this thing going on, and you might be interested in it. And so it was kind of like his thing, his like kind of baby project. And then I was like, learned about it, and I was like, dude, yeah, that sounds amazing. And then he recruited another guy, Muhammad, was born kind of like my left arm, but in his right leg. So he's got a short leg that leads to a foot, but it's only goes down about where your knee would be.
Okay.
And he's also an athlete. He's a Paralympian.
Is that the same disease, or does that have a different name?
No, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's something different.
Something different.
Yeah. We all connected, and we're all like into doing like Muhammad had done like that crazy event in the Sahara Desert. I can't remember what it's called. It's like a crazy like multi-day stage event where they have like camels chase you, and if you get passed by the camels, then you're out.
Wait, yes. It's an ultra run. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
What is that one called? But so he completed that, so we're like, all right, like
he's legit.
We know he's legit, yeah. And so we all just kind of formed this team, and I didn't really know, like I didn't hear from Andre for a little bit, and then he gave me a call in 2019. I think it was like November. It was like right when I moved to Jackson, and he's like, dude, do you want to do this? Like, I'm thinking about doing like South America this year, or it's like one other, I think it was South America, Europe or something. And I was like, yeah, when do you want to do it? He's like January or something, like December or January. And I was like, dude, it's like November right now. like, do we have, like, what do we got to, like, we got to plan for this thing. So he's like, yeah. So we just like went into hyper mode. I was ski instructing at the time up there still. So doing that, and then just would spend like all day planning, for this adventure. And we ended up going to South America, and we ended up doing it in February. Kind of funding and things came together like the last second. I mean, like, as I guess a lot of times it happens. But like, I mean, we didn't have plane tickets until like the week before.
Wow.
All of a sudden we got funding, and we're like, all right, sweet, let's go do it. And flew down there, and flew by the seat of our pants the entire time. But it worked out. Yeah, we were able to go from Laguna del Carbon, which is in southern Argentina. We had some locals that we met, and they helped us out to get to the lowest point, because we found out we like flew into Buenos Aires and then drove like 30 hours south, and found out it was a part of this private property, like energy company. It was the lowest point. And we're like, how do we get in? And these locals, this local mountain bike group was like, like, we'll show you how. So we had to sign like these waivers, and they opened these big gates, and we were able to bike like 15 miles in.
Is it like a crater? Like, I'm imagining
it's a big dried up lake. It's like a lagoon, and it's basically dried up, but it's like negative 300 and something feet, 341 feet or something like that.
So crazy that doesn't have water in it.
I know. We like rode our bikes out on it, and then came back and started our trip. Yeah, and rode right back out to the road, and riding. Then we're on a 2,000 something mile ride to get to the base of Aconcagua.
Wow. And that was mostly like a road bike from this lowest to the highest point?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had gravel bikes just in case. We were dominantly on road. Like, we had originally had a plan to go through Chile, and like had this epic route planned by all these lakes and stuff. But the Aconcagua can be kind of tricky, I found, especially at the end of the season, because the government would like shut it down, and it was different every year. And so I had read a bunch of things, and I kind of like was like, okay, I think I know it's going to be this date that they're going to shut down. So we need to be, meaning we had to be on the mountain by that date. Otherwise, nobody's getting on the mountain.
Because of the winter conditions.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So the permits are only good for that. I think you can get a winter permit, but it's a lot more hoops to jump through.
Yeah.
And all the guides are off the mountain. That's like the end of their season. So we were like, okay, we have to be on the mountain by this time. So, okay, we had enough. We were like, if we ride such X amount of miles a day, we'll get there, and we can do this cool route through Chile. But then we found out that like I was talking with some of the guides, and they're like, no, it's actually this date. And it was like 6 days before what we thought that it was going to be. And I was like, oh shoot. So we had to basically beeline it there. So we went straight through the desert of Argentina.
Oh wow.
Instead of going this epic route through Chile, we just like, and the wind was just crazy. There was like a turning point where there's one day where we're like, if we can crank out like 150 miles a day and like get over to Chile, then like I think we can do it. But the wind was so bad, and we had to turn left, which we went west, and the prevailing wind was coming from the west. So we're just getting hammered, and we're going like
turning into the wind.
Yeah, we're going 8 miles an hour max, and so we're like, ain't gonna work. So we had to turn around, and just go. We had like an alternate route planned that just went straight north through Argentina through the desert.
Okay.
And so that's what we ended up doing.
Did you guys run into any like unsafe conditions just being, I don't know, 3 tourists?
No, the people were super nice. Like, we had a great experience while we were in Argentina. Like, I mean, even riding on the roads, I felt, and it was, I mean, at times it was a busy road. Most of the time we were in the middle of nowhere, like maybe 200 miles of the next town, and all it was a little gas station with a little house next to it, and that's all it was. But the people, like truckers and cars, they would give us such a wide berth. Like, you know, like they would slow down and make sure no traffic was coming and then go around you.
Wow.
So we felt like super safe. Like, I've biked across the U.S. before.
It is not like...
And it's not like that, man.
No.
I mean, you're like gripping, you know. But yeah, in Argentina, it was like, felt great, honestly. The people were super nice. We didn't have our foundation set up at the time, and we actually got the idea. We set up a foundation to help people with disabilities in communities that we travel through. We stopped at this restaurant, and this guy, most restaurants are just like, do you want food or not? We're like, yes. And so they bring you just whatever they have, and it's
great.
Like, yeah, and
Perfect.
it's like sweet. Yeah, a bunch of meat,
Yes.
but lots of meat, but it was great. So that's exactly what we needed. And but the owner of the place like showed us a picture of his granddaughter, and she had like a condition much like my arm, but in both arms and her legs.
Whoa.
And she was like, it was a beautiful singer, you know, she was singing a song, and, you know, I could tell like it was kind of hard for their family to support her though, but they loved her just the same, you know, and they did support her, but it's hard for them to find resources for her.
Yeah.
You know,
there's more of a stigma around that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, I think in ways the U.S. is a bit far and beyond what, like, we still have a ways to go, but there's, other countries it's like can be huge stigmas associated with that.
Yeah, you can even see in America's last 50 years or so how far we've come, because like it was not always that way that America was accepting. My nephew has CP, and so he's gone through a lot of different special programs, and I'm always impressed by the amount of resources that are available. But then you kind of look historically, and that was not always the case. It was kind of like those folks were left behind and banished, and you know, nobody really gave a shit and just kind of
totally
ignored it.
They were like the basement kids, you know, or the weird person that lives down there, whatever. Like, banished from families. Like, it's crazy,
wild.
I mean, I was born the year the ADA came to be. So that was Americans with Disabilities Act. That was in 1990.
Okay.
So it was like a few weeks, or what was it? I can't remember what month it was. I think it was a few weeks after I was born that it came to be. So yeah, that's like within my lifetime that people are getting more rights. I feel like I'm a pretty, like, to have a disability, I like in that sense, I'm pretty privileged and blessed, because normally my condition is bilateral, so it would affect at least two limbs, if not all four. But for some reason it only affected my left arm.
Interesting.
So for me, I can kind of navigate the world, at least, you know. I mean, sure, I get pushed back here and there and social stigmas, whatever have you, but I can still perform everyday tasks, you know, like I can figure things out, you know.
Kick people's ass in a race.
Hell yeah. No, but you know, so I'm very fortunate that I can do that though, you know, whereas like, you know, if you have a different disability, like a mobility disability or something, like that's a different realm, you know, like you're reliant on care, and you're reliant on access. You know, for me it was more like, oh, does this guy or girl think I can do this? Oh, I'm gonna go show them that I can. Like, that was a lot of my life force, is like, I'm gonna go prove this person wrong, but I can do that, right? Because I don't really need much to do that. I just need this spirit of, let's go do it, you know.
Versus somebody like that little girl who might have a harder time getting to that place.
Right. Yeah, totally. And especially like where she doesn't in an area like that where she doesn't have access, you know, to funding or things like that. So it was a mixture of that interaction, and then Muhammad's story. He grew up in Morocco, and he has a very similar kind of story where he didn't have access to proper care. He like attached a stick to his leg, to his foot, and he was like a soccer player, and he got picked on and stuff. It was just so taboo to have a disability, and he would just attach sticks, literal sticks and stuff to be a leg, and then he found cycling. I think somebody brought him into cycling, and he's become a beast since then. I mean, he's on the Paralympics, racing for Team USA, going one leg. Like, he's a powerhouse.
That's crazy.
But so like it was a mixture of those two stories that were like, hey, what can we do? Because we're utilizing resources here. Like, part of our mission is we do want to change those social stigmas, because we've all like been through that. In some way, shape, or form, and we want to change those perceptions. We also just want to do something we like to do, which is like create an adventure and go have fun and push ourselves to go do it. But like, we're like, well, what impact can we have? So how can we help people out? So that was kind of part of that, and so we created our the Lowest Highest Foundation to serve people with disabilities that don't have access. So mainly third world countries is what kind of our target areas are.
And that'll be cool, because you guys are eventually going to be embarking on, 6 more continents.
Right.
And, probably meeting a tremendous amount of people along the way who have encountered those same sort of roadblocks and can, share your guys' own stories and adaptations and different things that you use to get where you are.
Definitely. Yeah, everybody was super stoked that we were in Argentina. I mean, there were some towns we went to. There was always, like, whenever there was like like something that we didn't know about, like maybe a challenge or like a danger, I guess, like we would meet random people that just helped us, like, for example, like when we getting to the lowest point, like that community was so stoked we were there. They were waiting for us, like gave us like these gifts, and like brought, like, we biked out with them. They were so happy that we were there. They were so excited for our journey. And then like we'd go through like a town, and somebody, like one time we saw this other cyclist just riding, and he came up next to us and he's like, where are you guys heading? We're like, well, the plan is to go right through here, and because we're going north. And he's like, oh, well, like I wouldn't do that if I were you. Like you're going through some pretty sketchy spots. So he like took us around this back way, and like we made it around this little town, and it worked out just fine. So
wow. So
like we would have like help like that. But everybody we'd get honks all the time and waves. I mean, people were stoked. I think with like Andre, like he's much more visible than like Muhammad or I, as far as like having a disability on a bike. So because he's on a hand cycle, right? So he's down low. So like that, maybe that visual helps too. And so people were just like, they were so friendly and nice. But.
Yeah, maybe it's like a little bit disarming, right? Like you see somebody on a hand bike without legs, really out there working and like giving their all to it. It's kind of like, who could in their right mind like hate on that?
Yeah, for sure, totally. And then they like, sometimes we would get stopped by people, and they like give us water or something and just want to hear about our story and stuff. And yeah, people were very excited, even in the broken Spanish that we could say. Sometimes people didn't always speak English. So
right. Do Moroccans speak Moroccan?
French. Oh. And is it I think is it a Moroccan? I can't remember. Right? Muhammad speaks like 3 different or 4 different languages.
Wow. Well, that'll help on the other continents maybe.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah, because there's like, I don't know, French came into Morocco. I think they owned it or something. So anyway, a lot of languages are there. So he's very fluent, except for Spanish.
Gotcha.
Andre knew the most Spanish, and then we just kind of picked it up as we went, kind of thing. But I knew a little bit before, but enough to maybe get in danger. But
so I imagine the trip wasn't all rainbows and butterflies. I know, I don't know exactly how high it is, but I imagine the highest point in South America is what, 22,800 feet, I think is what it is. Aconcagua.
Yeah, so just below 23K.
So talk to me about that climb.
Yeah.
I guess for you, biking is kind of in your wheelhouse. But
So actually, for me, biking was the hardest part.
Oh, really?
Because we had a crazy crosswind. So I probably had the hardest time on the bike than anybody.
Because the stability, like the side to side.
Yes. And normally, and it hurts my back too. So normally when I'm riding, like especially endurance, I'll do a lot of off the handlebars, just no handlebars, just kind of so I can sit back.
Cool kid bike.
Yeah,
Just speed only.
exactly. Just chilling,
Yeah.
But it relieves my back pressure. And if I can't do that, then all of a sudden it keeps building and building, and then to the point where I'm like, my back is starting to seize up and I can't move anymore. So I would basically ride until that point happened, and then I would just be like, all right, guys, I got to hop off. So I would hop off the bike and just stretch it out, and then we could hop back on and keep going. They even got to a point where Muhammad and Andre were trying to create wind barriers. Like the roads were pretty sparse, so like we could kind of ride 3 abreast if we wanted to sometimes. So like Andre would be out in front, Muhammad would be he'd be like on my front wheel, so I'd get less like wobbles. Muhammad would be stacking him, so just to block that crosswind, because it was we were going north and the wind just went west to east every day. I mean, same thing every day. It was probably, I think we biked for like 14 days, and I think maybe 2 or 3 of those days did we have a tailwind.
And that was from the lowest to the highest. That's like the kind of middle part of the section.
Yeah, so the lowest, like we went basically, we were on like the eastern part of Argentina, this road that just kind of goes kind of near the coast, just straight north.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And how long was the whole journey?
I think it was something around 2,000 miles biking, and then climbing Aconcagua. We were on the mountain for like, I want to say 12 or 13 days or something like that.
Wow. So the ascent took 12 or 13 days alone.
Right. Yeah. Because a barrier with Andre is that doing like the traditional acclimatization of like going up, coming down, going up, coming down, he goes through so much wear and tear, not only on his gear, but his body. So he's like, because he goes hand over hand. He had a mountain chair developed that he could push on the lower section, like a wheelchair.
Okay, so he's on a hand bike, but then when you get at a certain point of technicality, he switches over to like a mountain wheelchair?
Right,
okay.
Exactly, yeah. So basically when we hit the trailhead to the mountain, switches over to the wheelchair. And then this
thing's got like bigger tires on it, I assume.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's almost like mountain bike tires, but in a wheel. And it's got I think it's got maybe some extra stability up front, like longer wheels or something.
Okay.
But so he can navigate like a trail with it. But then when it gets too technical for that, he hops off, and then it's just hand over hand, just walking on his hands.
Yeah, like a monkey walk kind of.
Yep.
Just hand over hand.
He's got like a nub, like I don't know, maybe 8 inches of his right thigh.
Okay.
So he can he puts like a carbon fiber encasing over that to protect it, and then he just kind of hobbles over it, pushes himself up and over. And so, his hands are his feet. So if he has gloves on, think about like, he had like stitched reinforcing in his gloves that he did himself, and would blow through them, and then
they're gonna tear up so fast.
Yeah, I mean they're not shoes he's got on, and then I would just grab his wheelchair behind me, and I would pull it behind me on those sections, and then whenever he could, he'd hop back on. But we did that, we went up to like Confluencia, which is at like 11,000 feet, and that's our first camp, and neither Muhammad and Andre are really, I would say, mountain athletes, or they weren't. They didn't have
more
much
endurance,
experience.
just like pure endurance.
Definitely
athletes.
Endurance, yeah, but like not so much in the mountains. So I was kind of the mountain guy. So I kind of like was the guy to go, like I'm the guy that kind of gets the mountain pieces together.
The woodsmanship.
Yeah, and so they had a rough go for sure. Like Muhammad especially, he was like vomiting profusely at the first camp and stuff. We're like, oh man. So we had to spend like an extra day there, and then we went up to base camp, which is at like 14.5 or 14.3 or something, and did the same deal. Like Andre could push a little bit on the wheelchair, but I just dragged it behind me, and then got up to base camp, and we spent a number of days there so Andre could get acclimated. You know, our idea was just more time.
Yeah.
You know, and that would kind of help, you know, him acclimate, which kind of worked until we ran out of time, honestly, because we had to get off the mountain eventually. So Andre made it up to Camp 3. Was feeling pretty sick, but where he was like, I don't feel like, I'm not like, you know, I don't need to go down. Like I can fight this, like work this out for a little bit. And like, but then a storm was coming in. So we kind of had to make the decision to either go or not. And at that point we just didn't have enough time on the mountain.
How far was the push to the summit from Camp 3?
We did it in a day. I can't remember exactly how far it was.
Like one full day effort?
Yeah, I think so. I think Camp 2, we were at Camp 2. We didn't do Camp 3.
Okay.
Because it's pretty high. Camp 2, I want to say, is that 16 or maybe it's 18?
Still really high.
It might be 18. And then we're going to almost 23. So in that push. So Muhammad and I went. Muhammad was still like vomiting profusely, like feeling bad. But whenever he would move, he was like feeling okay. So he's like, all right, man, I'm going to try it. So we were like, all right. So we decided to make the push. We didn't want to leave Andre behind. And that was a big decision too. But we're like, all right, well, we're here. This is all the time we got before the storm. Let's make it happen.
What was his mindset when he realized that he wasn't going to make the summit push with you guys? Was he kind of like, go on without me? Or was he like, I want to do this? Or?
No, he was like we gave him more push. But I'm like, dude, we're here as a team. Like, I don't know if I feel comfortable going without, like, if you aren't going, like, I don't care. I don't need to go. Like, I don't need to prove anything by getting to the summit. Like, let's just all go down and call it a day. Like, I've enjoyed this thoroughly. We're out chilling in the mountains. It's great. It's what I like to do. But Andre was pretty adamant. He's like, no, dude, we started this thing. Like, we want to, like, let's get it done. We came 2,000 freaking miles. Like,
yeah,
somebody's got to touch the summit. So, so he was really adamant about us going up and himself staying back. So,
did you guys film this?
We do have some film. Yeah, we have some. So we had a buddy, an amateur filmer, come along with us for the bike portion. He also climbed with us. He made it as far as Andre did. And then we had another buddy, a Nat Geo filmer, come and meet us at base camp. And he was with us until Camp 2. But he also got altitude sickness, and he had just come down from filming, I think, in Patagonia, and then quickly, I mean, he's also a phenomenal athlete, but he just quickly came up to Camp 2 a little too fast. And then so he filmed us around the camp, and then he filmed us like kind of saying goodbye, and then Muhammad and I were out. So he actually ended up having to get airlifted out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was a bummer. And then Muhammad and I summited. We got a little bit of the summit on film with our iPhones, but everybody else was just feeling too bad. The other filmer, like, he was also had some altitude sickness going on, so they all decided to call it quits there.
How was the summit push? Did you guys like have a good day out, or?
Great day. I mean, phenomenal. Like, I don't think we could have asked for better on Aconcagua.
Well, that's like such a
clear.
good exclamation point on like that tail end of a bunch of people getting sick.
Totally. Yeah.
So.
It was really nice. I mean, yeah, wind was super minimal, if not existent, which is like super rare in Aconcagua.
At 23,000, you're saying?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was barely anything. Like, we had these big puffies, and I'm like, I don't even need this thing. I mean, we couldn't have been more fortunate. I mean, like, we were the last ones on the summit for that season.
That's crazy.
Everybody else was off the mountain. All the other guides were gone. Like, it was like base camp was a skeleton at that point. So we just got to share it together, and yeah, it was a really cool moment though.
And thinking about like the timing, like that's shoulder season too. It's not like you guys were even in like peak climbing season for 23,000. Like, it could have been any number of situations up there, and you guys just happen to have this like bluebird day.
Yeah, I guess they had a late snow that year too, so like there was no snow crossing. It was like probably the least technical it could have been. We did the normal route, so just a walk up basically. I mean, a little bit of scrambling here and there, but it's like, yeah, it was totally fine. Amazing day. Like, Muhammad still had a massive push because he's not used to being up so high. I was the only one used to being at altitude. I started feeling it around maybe 22K or so not far from the summit. Yeah, it was great.
And you guys, I assume, probably took more than one day to get down after that, just because
came
pretty rough.
I think Muhammad and I came back down to Camp 2 and spent the night, and then the next day we packed up and went and met everybody else at base camp.
Okay.
Spent a night there, and then the next day we packed up and left.
Nice.
So, yeah.
More uneventful on the way down?
No. so we had a celebratory meal. Like our guides had this meal prepared for us, and we're like, oh sweet, yeah, it was like chicken, right? One thing I've learned is in places in Argentina is like certain meats you don't want to eat because it's just not formal for them to eat it. Like beef is very like ham, but chicken is not one of those things. And
so wait, you're saying like culturally they don't want you to eat beef or ham?
No, they just don't eat it a lot.
They don't eat it.
Yeah, as far as I know, but they do eat ham and beef, but chicken not a lot of. And I don't know if that was part of it or not, or played a part, but we had a chicken meal for a celebratory meal at base camp, and then I got food poisoning, and so on the way down we start hiking down, and like midway through the day I'm just like feeling really rough, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, we're going down, I should be feeling better,
right?
And all of a sudden I turn around and just projectile vomit, like just Andre I think has this on film, because he was like with his GoPro like filming the scenery, and all of a sudden he like pans over to me and I'm just like
oh my god.
So I was like, oh man, I felt better after that, but so I keep walking, and I'm like carrying a good bit of weight on my back, and I just keep walking, and all of a sudden like an hour later or something, again I'm like starting to kind of stumble, and Muhammad is with me, and I just like again projectile vomit, and Muhammad was like, we had a little arguing fit, because he's like, dude, let me take the gear. I'm like, no man, you're fine, I'll be all right. But he's like, dude, like he was like, fucking take off your pack and give it to me.
Oh my God.
Because I was like stumbling around. I'm like, all right, because like, for him it's like he puts in so much work to like, downhill for him is really hard with his prosthetic leg, because his knee doesn't lock, so it could kind of give out, So I didn't want to like give him a bunch of weight, that's why I had a bunch of weight. But he's like, dude, give it to me. So I gave it to him, and I'm just like, I had like picked up a stick, and I was like stumbling, like walking like a zombie, and then we like we meet up with Andre, who was ahead of us, with another guy, the camera guy, Brian, and they look at me, they see me, they thought I was a different person, because I was just like way out of it. I had thrown up like 3 or 4 times at this point. I don't even know how I had that much in me. Was totally depleted, dehydrated. We get down to the Camp 1 to Confluencia at 11K, and I'm crawling at this point.
Oh no.
I had to crawl into the ranger station. We're only like 4 miles from the base of the mountain, but I had to crawl into the ranger station. I was like pleading for like water, but even when I drank, I would throw it right back up. And I was feeling so out of it. And then Andre comes in. He's like, dude, I'm feeling pretty shitty now too. Like he got some of it too. So we ended up, we had to make a decision, because this was the last day the mountain was open, and they're like, you guys got to get the hell out of here. So we had to call a flight.
Yeah, those guys are trying to go home.
yeah, everybody's trying to go home and get out. And this was the very last day we could have gotten a helicopter out. So we're like, either we do it or we got to somehow get down. And I'm crawling at this point. So I'm like, I guess if that's the option. So we had to call a helicopter to get us out from there.
4 mile,
yeah,
4 mile heli trip.
4 mile trip, yeah. So Andre and I took that. But anyway, and then we had to go to the hospital. Like, oh man, that was a long night. But yeah, so that was interesting. My doctor was reading my vitals wrong, and I caught him on it. Like, I was like, dude, that's like my pulse. That's not. It was. I can't remember what it was. What he was getting it confused with. But it was a very weird situation.
Yeah, the healthcare is not. I was like, probably what you're used to.
No, I was like, we got to get the hell out of here, man. Like, I know I just need rest. Like, and I need to rehydrate and chill. So you were able to go back to the hotel and chill. But
yeah, food poisoning is a hard one, right? Because it's like you need you need fluids
Mm-hmm.
and you need rest. And it's kind of like one of those time things. Like you just got to wait it out and let your body do its thing.
Yeah.
Because, right, it's just trying to get rid of
Right, exactly.
this alien.
And I knew that's what it was, but the doctors kept trying to tell me that it was like altitude sickness. I'm like, dude, I was feeling fine up there, and then coming down, like I was feeling worse on the way down. You know, like it's not altitude sickness.
Yeah. It'd be one thing if you got sick at 20,000.
Right, but I was fine.
You're at
20,000,
11K
you know?
and got sick. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, yeah, that was a whole ordeal, but we got it done, and then COVID hit. So right when we were on the mountain, kind of is when COVID blew up. Fortunately, we were already getting to the hospital, and then we had to reschedule our flights early to get out of the country, and we were like one of the last flights to get back to the United States. So that was like right on the cusp. But
Wow, that would have been crazy if you guys got stuck down there.
I know. Yeah.
It's pretty fortunate.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that would have been pretty wild. So, yeah, because they were shut down all travel to the U.S. The government had shut it down. And when I remember whenever like our flight attendants was like, telling us like, yeah, you guys are lucky. This is like one of the last flights leaving the country. So
Wow.
that was nice.
That was such a weird time.
Mm-hmm.
Like when everyone like realized COVID was like not just like a thing in China anymore, and like everyone instantly is like flying to wherever they feel most comfortable in a very quick hurry.
Right.
Like I don't think maybe like no generation has ever had that. It was like something out of I Am Legend, like everyone just fighting to get home and fly home because no one knows what the hell is about to happen.
Totally.
It was such a weird thing.
It was very weird. I'm fortunate, you know, I was living up in Jackson at the time, still am, so was able to make it back to Jackson and everything shut down. So I was kind of in my like, it's like this little oasis, but became this like very wealthy little oasis. Like all the wealthy people were like, oh, now we have to, you know, move out there. So like, yeah, they were doing the flights to Jackson, you know.
Oh yeah.
But I had my little spot, so that was nice. But yeah, the world changed after that for sure. Like I got home and lost my job immediately because they shut down the resort. You know, I was working for the Forest Service or transferring at the time up there from Colorado and lost that, you know, that summer. So yeah,
that's crazy.
Kind of everything fell apart.
What's the lifestyle like now for you? Are you still doing the Forest Service thing or skiing or?
Still ski instructing and yeah, a lot of backcountry skiing. I am getting into trail running more. So I hired a coach for that last year.
Sweet.
About a year and a half ago now. Okay. So, you know, I've always been like this, like, I don't know, pretty solid guy in the mountains, I feel like. But I've always kind of wondered what it would be like to like really actually train and, you know, in a more professional way. So started doing that really consistently for the last like year and a half. You know, because I've always wanted. I think I've had this in my mind where I want to be a professional athlete in some way, and the Paralympics just kind of never really did it for me. They just don't have like I like to be out in the mountains, right? You know, like I want to go trail running and try to do that, and I see non-disabled individuals doing that, but I don't really see any space right now for people with disabilities. And so I really want to make space for that in those sports and endurance sports, because we don't get like, there's just not the access. There's, you know, a lot of times we're just the last people to get talked about, like that community. And for me, you know, as I talked about earlier, I don't have much of like any mobility disability, so I can kind of put myself in those positions and, you know, hopefully be a better advocate for people with disabilities that want to get into those sports, into mountain sports. It's like ski mountaineering, you know, trail running, like those. That's what I'm interested in. I'm not so interested in running around a track. You know, I want to be out in the mountains. So
yeah, I share that sentiment. Like road running does not do it for me, but like you give me the same amount of miles or the same amount of time frame and say I get to run in the mountains, instantly like my eyebrows shoot up and I'm excited. I don't know, just is not the other to me.
Totally. Oh, it's totally different. Yeah. So that's kind of the lifestyle that I've kind of been trying to make for myself up there. I worked as a carpenter up there, you know, after COVID hit, got a job as a carpenter, but then I realized carpentry is very hard on your body as it is, and then doing it with one arm is like tenfold, you know, on your one limb. So that's I think how I tore my labrum up. So I had to stop doing that, and so just taking kind of jobs as I can right now, and work gear stores and stuff like that. So
Cool.
yeah, doing that and making life work and staying in the mountains as I can. Yeah.
What's the next endurance thing? Like, do you guys have another plan for the highest lowest?
So we were in Europe this past summer. We were trying to do Europe, but Andre has a shoulder injury that's kind of been acting up, and so he kind of had to drop. So we were already out in Europe. Like I planned like a mountain, like a kind of a training, because we were doing Mont Blanc, and I did.
Is that the highest in Europe?
It's the highest that's all encompassed in Europe. Mount Elbrus is technically, but it's like on the Eurasian border. It's also on the border of Russia.
I see what you're saying.
So the limited access right now with the border of Russia. So we were going to do both, like start from the Caspian Sea, which is the lowest point, go to Elbrus because it's not crazy far, and then trek to Mont Blanc and just do both. That was our original plan, but because of what's going on in Russia and things, we decided to just cut it down to Mont Blanc for now. We were gonna do that, but we did the mountain. Like I kind of had a training for us to do because Andre and Mohammed hadn't been on glaciers before, so I was like, we need to get some training in. So we went to Italy to do that, and Andre just kind of like messed up his shoulder a little bit further and was like, yeah, it's not going to happen for me this year. So he had to bail, and then Mohammed was pursuing the Paralympics, so he has a bunch of races. So he's like, it just didn't work out. So I decided to pursue a couple of trail races out there. Like we went to Corsica. My partner and I just stayed in Europe for the summer because we actually lose our housing in Jackson for the summer, so it kind of works out.
Oh, okay.
So we stayed in Europe, and I did the Restonica race in Corsica, which is like a 70K race, super technical, like beat the crap out of me, but really fun and hot, but lots of elevation. So I did that one, and that got me into the OCC, which is part of the UTMB series.
Gotcha.
So out of Chamonix, well, it starts in Switzerland, ends in Chamonix. And through that, I was able to advocate for other people with disabilities. There were three other individuals within the UTMB series racing with disabilities. One of my buddies, Zach, he's a professional runner for On,
Okay.
on Cloud Shoes. And he's already been advocating and in that field and doing it professionally. And so we kind of teamed up to speak with the UTMB officials to try to make it more accessible for people.
Wow.
So we're working on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. They came out with a policy, an adaptive policy, but we're not quite happy with it yet. We're trying to keep the ball rolling and keep that going. So
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a worthwhile effort and something that's close to your heart. So.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'd love to see categories coming up, like I want to race, and I think like race against people that makes sense, because my whole life I've been competing against people like non-disabled individuals. So I'm like, I got to the point where I'm like, I have to be like these people, even though I'm not, right? And that put me in a really weird negative headspace. And now that I'm like more accepting, I think, of who I am as an individual, like not thinking there's something wrong with me. It's just how I am. And like, I'm a normal guy. Right. But, normal, but different, I guess, but, more accepting of that. So now I'm like, well, I want to boost other people up to enter this space so we can create something, I want to create a competitive field out of this and like, really bolster it. So that's kind of my goal going forward in that space. So hopefully I'll run the UTMB one day. That's a goal, do the full 100 miler out there. So
You could do it.
yeah,
No doubt in my mind.
yeah.
Well, let me know if there's anything I can do to help or spread awareness. I think the mission is extremely admirable and worthwhile in every way. Get people out in the mountains no matter what kind of hand they were dealt.
Totally.
Why not?
Yeah. And with like how gear is getting more accessible, it's some really cool things going on right now. And just like bringing accessibility from like just like even street clothes to athletic clothes and outdoor clothes. It's really, really cool. Like there are some brands that are maybe accidentally accessible, but it's making life easier for everybody, right? And those create more opportunities for people with maybe lack of mobility or something like that. So
Definitely.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
it's a worthwhile effort, and I'm stoked to see where it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I super enjoyed this conversation, and I think what you're doing is amazing. So I'm just glad that I got to learn about your story and all the things that you're working on. So appreciate you coming out. And
Thanks for having me. Yeah,
absolutely.
It's been great.
And yeah, hopefully in the future we get to do a little mountain adventure together.
Dude, I love that. Yeah,
right, man.
that'd be great.
Till next time.
All right, man.
See you guys.
Picnic.
Picnic.